Welcome to our community. I'm Michael Levy, President of the Digital Health Institute for Transformation, or DHIT for short. We've teamed up with Crowdicity and the ASSIST Center at North Carolina State University to launch this exciting virtual incubator. COVID-19 has created a worldwide crisis that has shaken our communities to the core. The virus's toll on human life and our standard of life cannot be overstated. However, the present crisis creates an opportunity. We can come together as innovators to create new solutions that solve real problems, not only related to COVID-19, but which can be sustained long after the pandemic. We're all in this together, and we need your ideas, your input, and your energy. We need status quo challengers, those with great ideas, potential game-changing solutions, and practicing care providers and public health officials to help us submit, comment, vote, test, and develop. I'll turn things over to my co-host Adam Curry to invite you to participate in our challenges.
Thank you, Michael. I'm Adam Curry, Innovation Ecosystem Director at the ASSIST Center. We've worked with thought leaders in healthcare, research, and industry to identify some of the key health challenges facing us in light of COVID-19. Through this incubator, we are presenting these challenges to the innovator community. We want all of you innovators to submit and share your ideas for solving these problems, and we want everyone, inventors, entrepreneurs, people in large companies and small companies, those giving care and those who've received care, to provide your insights on the ideas you see posted. You'll find all of the challenges presented on the welcome page. Click on Challenge to learn more and post your idea about how to address it. Also, take a chance to review the other submitted ideas and provide your own insights. You may see a chance to collaborate with someone else in the community. If so, reach out and have a deeper discussion. As we move toward the end of the incubator, we'll invite final proposals, which you can submit as an individual or maybe as a team that you've formed. And our judges panel will select the most promising proposals to move on. Now, if you're in a company or other organization with an interest in improving healthcare, we are actively seeking people like you to partner with us in this initiative. Join us as a program champion, and you can issue sub-challenges to help your organization find the right solutions. Or be an innovation champion and create an innovation award for an idea that stands above the rest. Finally, you can join us as a program supporter and let the community know that you're with us in fighting persistent healthcare challenges. Over the course of the incubator, we'll also be hosting a webinar series to inform the challenges. I'll turn it back over to Michael now to tell you more about it.
Thank you, Adam. To spark discussion and catalyze ideas to these challenges, we're hosting a series of webinars every 2 weeks that bring together subject matter experts and thought leaders to educate the ecosystem regarding the many challenges and opportunities to advance care and utilize emerging technologies. The combination of these didactic expert panels and the crowdsourcing of ideas through the incubator create an engine to propel innovations from ideation to development to impact. Upon final submission of your ideas, our ecosystem of experts and champions will review them and select winners and recipients to our challenges and special innovation awards. Here's to building a cloud community to drive ground immunity. Welcome, panelists. Welcome, attendees. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. Many thanks for joining us on today's Digital Health Institute for Transformation's podcast web series, the DHIT Frequency. Season COVID Unites Us All. I'm your host today, Michael Levy, DHIT's president. I'm usually joined by Adam Curry, the Innovation Ecosystem Director for the ASSIST Center, but he is on vacation today, having the privilege to enjoy his family without any interruption. And so I have the honors of hosting today's panel. This web series is a place where transformers, health transformers, problem solvers, innovators come together to talk about everything in digital health, from technology to problems to application, and I'm really excited today about today's session and the session 2 weeks from now as we focus really on our innovation champions that have agreed to support our virtual incubator, which was the parallel program to the web series that supports this COVID pandemic in an application-based narrative where we've been really trying to catalyze idea submission, and then, with the hope of the, kind of connecting the innovation champions that you'll learn from today and next episode to support the maturation and the acceleration of ideas and concepts from discovery to deployment and delivery, and what that roadmap looks like. What are the pitfalls? What are the challenges? What are the opportunities? Not just in the possibilities of the emerging technologies or emerging ideas, but the advancement of how do you take an idea and develop upon it and validate it and nurture it and challenge every assumption and hypothesis about it and the problem and the adoption of it. And that's the purpose of today's session, is to start to dig into that, and as well as next sessions on August 7th. We've got three amazing organizations and leaders within those organizations here today to help us dig in and pull back those covers on the innovation journey. We have Dr. Michael Rulin, who is the director of the Charlotte AHEC. He's the vice president of medical education for Atrium, runs the simulation lab within Atrium Health, an incredible expert in building and developing really tangible and impactful applications and solutions, and really trying to educate and drive adoption in the clinical workforce. Of course, he's also a regular on DHIT Frequency. So thank you, Michael, for joining. We've got Chris Lamb, the co-founder and chief technology officer of Device Solutions, an engineering consultancy powering the future, one device at a time. I love that, Chris. Super cool tagline and very relevant. And we've got John Sotomayor, who runs a strategic intellectual property advisory and patent prosecution firm specializing in servicing startup and emerging growth companies. Obviously, you can see the combination of clinical relevance, clinical application, device development, device acceleration, and the protection of that intellectual property and value, and how important these three very different perspectives, albeit integration and combined value, really amplifies as this conversation will unfold today. So I'm super excited to jump in, gentlemen. So curious to hear from each of you and what you do every day for your organizations, and how we can support innovations, ideas along the innovation journey. Before we kick off, like I do every week, or I should say every episode, I want to draw our attention to those on the front line of this pandemic. I really didn't imagine, at the start of this pandemic, we'd be here 4 months later, still sharing our thoughts, energy, and prayers to those on the front lines fighting to save lives, those who are fighting for their life, and those who are fighting to preserve their standard of life. But here we are 4 months later, and it seems that we're not nearly out of the force that we're dealing with. So I expect that that's going to be a call, regardless of how long this season, specific season of DHIT Frequency goes on. We'll be dealing with this pandemic for months and years to come, to some extent. So I hope everybody, across the ether with us who are joining, can just have a collective energy send to those who are fighting. That said, I'd also like to thank our sponsors and our partners, those like John, Chris, and Mike, but others that support our web series and our virtual incubator.
Thank you to our program and innovation champions, our program champion, Pfizer Digital, and to all of our innovation champions, especially those that are on our panel today. Thank you for making this possible.
And before we kick off, I want to encourage, again, the audience to send in your questions throughout the program today. We'll try to incorporate them real time if they align specifically to our content in stream. If not, we'll piggyback on the back end of this and direct certain questions to our panelists. So please use the Q&A function within Zoom to share with us. Okay, gentlemen, really the kind of first part of this program, I'm going to ask each of you one by one a question. We have 3 questions curated just to get us going here, to learn about your organization, to understand who you are, and to perhaps understand what you see in what you saw in our program and how your organization supports ideas. So Mike, let's start with you. Charlotte AHEC, tell us about the organization. Why does it exist?
Well, the AHEC system in North Carolina was founded to introduce trainees in healthcare to opportunities in rural healthcare in North Carolina. So the program is administered through the program office based in Chapel Hill at the University of North Carolina. There are 9 separate AHECs within the state of North Carolina. The Charlotte region AHEC serves 8 counties in the approximate region of Mecklenburg County. Our focus in Charlotte is that we provide lots of continuing professional development opportunities for all healthcare disciplines. We offer continuing education credit in 10 different disciplines. We ordinarily serve about 12 to 14,000 discrete learners in any given year, and we provide about 45,000 hours of instruction in every year. In addition, we have practice support functions where we primarily support independent practices in our region, ensuring that they have access to electronic health records and other practice support methodologies, including performance improvement opportunities. One final thing that I'd really like to highlight is that we offer pipeline programming. So we reach way down into high schools. We start talking to students about careers in healthcare. We help them have experiences in healthcare environments. We help them prepare to take the SAT. We teach them how to do interviews, both for collegiate interviews and for jobs, and support them after they graduate with things like letters of recommendation. So that's briefly what the Charlotte Area Health Education Center does. That's amazing.
Thanks for that quick overview. Just one quick follow-up question to that. How has Charlotte AHEC taken this digital transformation into account right now? And what I can imagine as you're training 45,000 hours of education, you've got to be looking at how that education changes and matures or evolves, considering our current place in time.
So we have about 50 teammates. They've been based in a large education complex near the airport in Charlotte, and every last one of them went home to work at the beginning of the pandemic in about March. We've continued to move everything forward. We had a nearly immediate conversion to virtual formats, and we continue to conduct our trade over the internet. That has required some interesting innovation in what we do, but I think we're moving successfully forward, and we're keeping the education enterprise rolling along.
Appreciate the content and context there, and I'm going to dig into that a little bit later some more. Chris, Device Solutions. Interesting name. Give me an understanding of the organization and what Device Solutions does and why does it exist.
Sure. Thanks for setting this up, and good morning, everybody. Really appreciate everyone's time this opportunity. We started Device Solutions in 2003 to leverage our skills with designing connected wireless devices, and hopefully to bring those skills to an audience who had the imagination perhaps for a new product or solution, but not the skills to realize that. So even then, it was pretty clear that connected apps and devices were going to be the way of the future. We started off with doing some early opportunities for instant messaging on non-smartphones. So back when people were still willing to triple press keys and things like that to get their messages out. You could say we were IoT developers before IoT was cool. And we believe that we could bring these services to a broader audience and help them kind of realize their ideas.
That's awesome. Naturally, I can imagine you're pretty excited with the evolution and acceleration of the market today, and where the demand is and where the need is, and going from almost futuristic to absolutely critical in current realities, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been interesting to watch. Being involved in the cellular telephone industry before that. We had CDPD devices that sort of barely did text and about 9600 baud, and we were trying to talk to people about apps and things like that with those and similar 2G challenges. And around the time of the .com boom, everybody was talking about being able to connect anytime, anywhere. There was a boom and everyone stopped, a bust, and everyone stopped talking about it. It wasn't cool for a while. And I think it just sort of, by osmosis, almost everybody does it and doesn't even realize that, hey, the future from 2000 is here. I have everything, HD video on my phone all the time and everything else. And in some ways, the timing of the pandemic certainly has been relatively fortunate because, 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, these forums would not have worked as well. Yeah,
it's, a great crisis in a lot of cases yields great opportunity, right? And we're in this moment of time where macro forces are playing, a rhyme or a riddle, and we're all sitting here with one of two choices. Do we take advantage of the opportunity and redesign and re-engineer our expectations of what the world and what society will look like in the 21st century, or do we try to preserve the historical narrative and design that we've grown up with and have built our understanding on, and it's a pivotal moment in time. There's no way we have the technical capabilities really to almost do anything that we dream of. But what are the cultural and regulatory and political and all the other shifts that have to take place to really realize that? And focusing on John and Soto IP, maybe we can share a little bit about Soto IP and what you do every day, and maybe tie it to this realization that the world has changed, and I'm sure you're seeing that change as well. And how do you protect that change?
Yeah, exactly. We have, I have to say that we have a huge educational component to what we do as well. In my career, I started out as a software engineer and then became a patent examiner and then in-house counsel and now an independent patent attorney. But in all of these roles, the one thing I discovered is that most people who want to protect their intellectual property don't know how to go about it. All of the information on the web is either incorrect or incomplete. And if you call up a patent law firm, they'll say, yeah, we'll file a patent for you. But they don't really tell you what it means. They don't tell you why it's valuable. They don't tell you why you should do it, let alone whether you've got something that should be patented or not. And that's the biggest question. So we started this firm to attempt to address that issue first. That's why we call ourselves a strategic advisory. We want to provide entrepreneurial companies and emerging companies with the reasons why they should think about strategically protecting their IP, or sometimes it doesn't make sense to protect your IP. Sometimes it makes sense to just simply use those dollars to go push forward marketing. So we provide that information, that education to entrepreneurs, to small growth companies, to larger companies, to let them understand what it means for them to protect their IP. Because the biggest thing is, if you just simply put your product out there on the marketplace, I mean, we know that China can knock off a product in 30 days. You know, China can knock off a software program in 90 days. And so having protection through the patent system permits you to keep others from making, using, selling, or importing your patented invention. But how you achieve that is part of the strategy that we work with entrepreneurs to say, okay, this is what you need to think about. This is how we can help you move forward. And then, of course, we have the ability to both prepare and prosecute patent applications on their behalf. But the strategic role is the most important one to me. That's the one that's near and dear to my heart. Let's just talk about it. Let's figure out what you need to do to move forward, or if you even need to at all. Yeah. So that's why we started this firm, to both do a prosecutorial and an educational role.
That's awesome. I mean, and I can only imagine, and we can dig into this a little later as well, but you know, one of the underlying principles of the 21st century is open, collaborative, multidisciplinary, and I can only imagine the patent equation becomes ever more complex and ambiguous when you're talking about building on top of building on top of building on top of building on top of building. And that's effectively what open innovation is, and what open collaborative models of software and product development look like. And so I'd be curious as we mature in this conversation to tug back on that. Thank you, John.
Sure.
Let's continue with you, but get to the next section, question, John. You know, what you talked about, you know, what you do, why your organization exists, but you personally, you know, why do you get up in the morning? You know, what personally drives you?
You know, I think this is a great question, and I really do appreciate your including me on this panel, because for me, it truly is a sense of wonder on hearing what people have come up with. 90% of all patentable inventions build upon what has gone before. But every once in a while, you see something that is so new that it has no parallel. And that's really what gets me excited. I mean, we have companies that do everything from prediction of lightning to building a better way to bend rebar, to building a software algorithm that can output details during operation on internal memory processes, which is just incredibly difficult. But for me, I'll sit down and talk with these people and say, that's amazing. I've never heard of anything like that before. And for me, the sense of wonder and the sense of how we move technology forward is what keeps me excited about this. I've been doing this now for 20 years, and I've never lost that excitement. And every time I hear some new innovation, I simply go, wow, you know, that's just cool. So that's why I do it.
That's awesome. It's so, you know, simple, but yet so, you know, profound that it can last a lifetime of you know, value, wonder, just simply the sense of wonder. Appreciate sharing, John. Chris, how about you? You know, what's you wake up in the morning, you open your eyes, it's what, 5:30 a.m., 6 a.m., and pop out of bed. Why?
Well, kind of similar to John's answer, solving interesting problems. So coming up with stuff that's worth patenting, I guess, would be a good way to put it. You know, that's definitely what drives me, both in a technical sense and, you know, often it's a business or marketing sense as well. You know, keeping the business here lean and efficient, and making sure we deliver, you know, really high quality solutions very effectively is part of the challenge that I have. So
where did that come from, though? Where did that you know, kind of just deep intrigue with solving problems? Did you grow up in a, you know, looking at problems? Were you furious that there were these problems that needed to be solved? Where does it come from?
Yeah, I grew up in an engineer-centered house, you could say. You know, my dad was one, my grandfather was one, and my, you know, great-grandfather wasn't an engineer, but he ran a radio shop and was involved in some of the early broadcast stations. So it goes way back, and I can even remember visiting his shop as a young kid. So, you know, hands-on solving problems. And, you know, these days it's particularly interesting because the technology is changing so fast. The tools that we have, and, you know, the ability to use some of the open source and crowdsource kinds of things to bring new products. These days, you know, machine learning and AI is sort of pushing down and down into the edge gradually. So it's just never dull, and there's great opportunities. And the business cases are often evolving just as fast.
No, thank you. Well, it seems like you, yeah, you are genetically engineered to be be a problem solver and a tinkerer from the day you were born to a developer now. Mike, similarly, you know, I've asked you this question a handful of times, and I never get tired of listening to you, you know, explain your motivations and passions. And rather, you know, equal purpose in life. You know, why don't you share with us again? Well, you get up, you've been doing what you've been doing for much of your life, and it stays current and consistent. Share with us why Mike gets up.
Well, number one, Michael, I would never get up at 5:30 in the morning unless I had a gun. So let's get that straightened out right away.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
You know, I guess overall, I want to make a difference with my life and my career. And so let me tell you how I kind of tie that together. In addition to Charlotte AHEC, you mentioned the simulation center that I'm responsible for. And I'm also responsible for the 2 colleges of health sciences that Atrium Health operates. What that means is I have an opportunity to impact the developing careers of healthcare professionals, and I have an opportunity to help them maintain licensure and interest in what they're doing in healthcare. And when I sit back and contemplate that, I'm kind of going, wow, this is pretty awesome. I feel really good about that set of tasks. But the way I try to move this forward is, let me reference something that my good friend Michael Levy brought to my attention not too long ago. And it's a little bit dated, Michael, but it's the World Economic Forum Jobs Report from 2016. And in that report, the great quote that you pointed out to me was that in 2016, the jobs that were in greatest demand across the world in industrialized countries were jobs that didn't even exist 5 years prior. So that's already 4 years old. I assume that the pace of change has accelerated a bit. So let's think that perhaps, you know, the jobs in greatest demand in healthcare right now didn't exist 4 years ago. As a person involved in education and healthcare, how do I respond to that, both in terms of innovation as an educator and innovation as a healthcare provider? To me, one of the things that most folks in healthcare don't necessarily do is to try to project themselves out into the future by 10 to 15 years and to try to figure out the sorts of disciplines that may be very pertinent at that point in time. I think we can assume, looking at the pace of change and the pace of innovation in technology, that health careers will be different. There will be needs for physicians and nurses, but those great IoT connected devices that Chris is working on will need people that understand how to use them, how to deploy them, how to keep them cyber secure. And so in my world, I like to think about what those devices might be, but even more importantly, I want to empower healthcare workers of the future to be able to undertake that work.
I love that. It's an exponential amplifying network effect, if you will. It's you know, I kind of aligns to, you know, I often ask this question. It's evolved over time. Why I think this question is so important. It gets to purpose. You know, purpose of living, purpose of being. You know, the value, the indicator of success for my life I put on is the extent of impact on the world, right? And how do you constantly tweak, you know, that equation? I'm one person, you're one person, but depending on how you approach your energy, how your energy spend every day, you can increase the impact on the world, and that's what you're talking about. And I appreciate that, Mike. John.
And Michael, if you don't mind, I'd like to sort of amplify just a little bit on what Michael Rulin said. One of the things that we see a lot of, and you know, thinking about forward momentum in terms of medical diagnosis and medical treatment, is one of the things we see a lot of are systems that utilize sort of machine learning. I don't like to use artificial intelligence because there aren't any artificially intelligent systems. It's just learning systems. So these systems that use machine learning to find unexpected results from reams and stores of data that a human mind just simply cannot encompass. Those are areas in terms of analytical review and discovery of unexpected results that will lead to new ways in which to diagnose things and treat things. And we're seeing a lot of that happening just over the last 2 years. So in the future, we're going to see a lot of diagnosticians that will also be statisticians, as well as utilizing their machine learning systems to help them.
The blend and boundary spanner concept, the level of convergence in the 21st century is going to be, tremendous. And this is why I love, the multidisciplinary kind of panels that we put together here in the DHIT Frequency, just to show that independently we all have value, but together that value is amplified and really critically necessary and needed as we move forward for a whole host of reasons, and we can dig into some of those. I want to jump into our third question here in this setup, and it's somewhat self-promoting, but also curious to understand and to share with our audience, why each of your firms decided to participate in the DHIT ASSIST virtual incubator. What did it matter to you, and what do you set to deliver and support? Let's start with you, Mike. And because I look at clinical relevance as such a critical upstream narrative, and so a perfect place to start. Charlotte AHEC is an innovation champion. You are sitting with a place in our innovation journey on the discovery side, anchored to these two words, clinical relevance. Can you tell us just a little bit about what that means to you, and why you decided to join in, and what do you offer into our an awardee?
So one of the requirements to develop educational activities in any discipline is to start with a needs assessment. And so across pretty much all disciplines in healthcare, we have the opportunity to hear from healthcare providers the things that they need to be educated about. And that starts sometimes with problems that they're having, sometimes with journal articles that they've read, sometimes with needs for change. One of the biggest things that we're dealing with right now is how you deal with social equity issues, institutionalized bias in healthcare systems, and we're developing programming on that. Now that's perhaps not as much a technological thing to do, but we are exploring perhaps some 360-degree video applications to essentially put participants into the shoes of other people, into the persona of other people, so that they can experience more of the emotionality of those sorts of issues. Across the 4 business units that I manage within Atrium Health, we have an opportunity from time to time to be presented with people that would, for instance, like to bring devices into the simulation center for trials there. And I would have to say that there are a fair number of times when we kind of sit back and take a deep look at devices or proposals, and we sort of have to go, well, for instance, right now, healthcare is facing a very large economic crisis because of COVID. The things that healthcare systems and providers have ordinarily made money on have sort of evaporated in the face of the need for people to socially isolate and stay away from healthcare systems. And so within healthcare, an individual probably would not want to be bringing us a device that is high cost, difficult to implement, has high problems with connectivity if it's connected, because it's not going to go anywhere. Within healthcare, I think the immediate premise for the foreseeable future will be easy to implement solutions that are cost effective and can reach as broad population as possible when they're implemented. So I think what we may have to offer, and what we did offer, is the opportunity to help evaluate concept ideas and to help speak to the practicality of implementation, particularly in the pandemic environment that we're in right now.
Lovely. And greatly appreciated and tremendously valuable for who assumes that award. Chris, I'll jump over to you because it just seems like from a development perspective, what a great place to pick up from. And I'm sure there's a incredible overlap in like how you validate an idea before developing and how you research, the respective value of that idea. But can you maybe just overlay and piggyback on Mike and kind of share like, okay, if Mike and AHEC validated that and then you came in as device, I mean, how valuable would that be, and how would you approach it from a device solutions perspective? And then, obviously, as we talk about the innovation award that you'll be delivering against, probably, package that up as well if you can. I know those were many questions all in one, but
Sure.
Well,
we see this. We've been working with ASSIST for at least 5 years, I believe, been members, and really enjoyed kind of getting to see the cutting edge and learn more about medical and environmental sensors and things that are coming along, as well as some of the very low power electronics that they're developing. So this was a great opportunity to kind of continue that and maybe look for some market opportunities and people with the imagination in that space. So basically, interesting problems to make a positive impact. And in the ASSIST world, there's been a lot of the validation going on by building some proof of concepts and test platforms, and even taking those into the test labs at the UNC hospital. So this is very much a continuation of that same kind of activity. And we see, over and over again on our connected health devices that we've done and others, the ability to really validate, can you get the data you want? Is there a business model? Would the healthcare providers or the end users really want to use this device? What do they need? That's critical. So, and not really a serial process. It's always best when we can work with the simulation labs or anybody like that to say, what if we did the user interface like this? What if the data looked like that? And well, yeah, that's a great idea, but if you put that screen in there, it's going to triple your cost, or you can't really send that much data because you don't have a car battery connected to it. So being able to do all those kinds of things in parallel and get some real validation back and forth is great, especially with the early prototypes. So we're always looking for those opportunities to refine the product concept and do that in parallel, kind of in an agile fashion, you could say.
And naturally, Device Solution has agreed to put that framework and that energy to our incubator and support an awardee shortly after we announce August 7th. So thank you very much, Chris and Device Solutions. John, so now we've got a device, I suppose, in development. Maybe share, what stage, where do you look to even get involved on the IP equation?
Sure.
After development, way before development, and then maybe piggyback that with why you joined the DHIT Assisted Virtual Incubator.
Sure. Yeah, this is, I'll actually start with that first. I mean, we definitely wanted to get involved with y'all because these are the exact companies and individuals that need to have this information, because there are some timeliness issues regarding how you can protect your intellectual property. And people need to understand that. I mean, the United States patent system changed in 2013 with the implementation of the America Invents Act. We went from first to invent to first inventor to file. And that doesn't sound like much of a change, but it truly is. In the past, I mean, before 2013, if you could document that you had invented something first, you could go ahead and file for a patent on it. It didn't matter when you did it. It's not true anymore. Now, if you publicly disclose your innovation, and there's a whole discussion about exactly what public disclosure means. And if you have publicly disclosed your innovation, you've got 12 months in order to file for patent protection, or the patent office considers that you've given it up freely to the public. So if you miss that 12-month window, you're out of luck. You really are, and you cannot file for protection. Also, there, you know, if you want to do things that go overseas, there are also other public disclosure notifications that are different in various countries. If you publicly disclose before filing in the United States, you lose all rights in Europe, for instance. So we want to work with innovators so that they understand that. Now, the perfect time to get involved is when they have completed what we call the reduction to practice. That means if you can describe how you're going to implement your solution, whether you've built the prototype, whether you built the proof of concept, or whether you have a working product, doesn't matter. If you can describe it in such a way that somebody like Chris can come along and do it, that's when you need to be thinking about IP protection, because patents cover innovation and creation, not the reduction to practice. But you have to have the reduction to practice in order for a patent to be granted. All of this is information that innovators need to know. And incubators are the very best place for us to impart that information, which is why we're excited to be involved with this. What we wish to award to the individual that or individual company that we select is free strategic consulting. You know, the hours of our time spent walking them through exactly what they need to be doing and how they need to be moving forward, or if they should need to be moving forward. About 40% of the time, we discover that, like I said in my remarks, that it's better for them to spend the dollars on marketing than it is to spend on a patent, because either you might not get the patent, or it'll be something that even if you get the patent, your market size is so small that it won't do you any good, because this is a long-term process. It takes anywhere from 2 to 4 years from the date of filing before patents are awarded. Now, you're under patent pending status during that whole time, but that's something else that innovators need to understand. So all of this wrapped up into a couple of different strategic consulting hours are one of the things that we propose. And then also we're going to propose a significant discount on services for an initial patent preparation. So that's what we're going to give to an innovator who receives our award, both the strategic consulting and a discount.
It's amazing, and that's just, you know, 3 examples and 3 initiatives that are coming together under this incubator on August 7th. We'll have 3 other additional organizations with representatives sharing why they came together to support this initiative and what they're offering. But I want to set the context of the challenge here for an entrepreneur. I mean, think about this real fast. We're talking, we've put together, a half a dozen extraordinary organizations that come together to service the entrepreneur's journey, the innovation journey. And this is why DHIT, really and ASSIST have come together, and primarily why DHIT exists specifically, because this journey is so complex. It's so variable depending on what problem you're solving, what solution you're creating, who you're servicing. And I've felt, and my team over the years have felt obligated to simplify that journey for our ecosystem of problem solvers and entrepreneurs, because else they're left on their own to try to navigate and try to successfully find a path forward. And this is where, and specifically in digital health, you have this valley of death from seeded angel funding to Series A. That valley of death is what we're working just so hard to try to close, because it's all of your experiences, all of your technical know-how, and the combination and the integration of all the various perspectives come together to actually optimize that journey, and to say, well, don't go there, you don't need to do this, actually let's go here and test that, et cetera, et cetera. And so this, from a intent and a goal perspective for the virtual incubator and the partnership of ASSIST and DHIT, was to say, look, let's try to build on a small scale what we could do as an ecosystem if we all came together and supported entrepreneurs to accelerate that path. And then perhaps that's a blueprint to blow out and amplify across our ecosystem, across our region, to do it over and over and over and over again, to start to solve our problems at scale with the talent that we have in this region. So, again, thank you all for your participation in the incubator, what you're going to deliver to the award or E's that come out of it. So again, many thanks. John, I wanted to tug back on the open innovation equation and open kind of collaborative frameworks, and I just want to get your perspective, if we can start there with what have you seen as change in IP kind of tolerance and IP I would say engagement with open frameworks of collaboration? Because I'll be transparent. We started the virtual incubator as an open innovation environment where the ecosystems come together and they submit an idea and they comment on the idea, and then we build upon that. It didn't really go anywhere, in full transparency and humbling reality, because people were very protective of their ideas and they didn't want to share, and there was fear of sharing for a whole host of reasons. So we closed it and created a closed submission process, and then engagement went way up. But when we think about some of the great innovations in the last 5 to 10 years, open innovation is what drove them and created them from an open source specifically, right? So can you talk about just what you're seeing as the evolution of open has become a reality, and how you're looking at the difference between protecting an idea and protecting an environment versus leveraging open environments?
Sure. Yeah, I'm glad you gave me an easy question there. It actually has several facets to it, Michael. One of the biggest things, because we do specialize in software and software hardware systems, one of the biggest questions that we get, and this is aside from just the idea of collaborative development, that's a different issue. But in terms of utilizing open source software or open source software hardware systems as a building block for your innovation, there is a very, very clear way to keep your idea separate from an open source system. And I understand why people are protective of their ideas, because even though ideas may be a dime a dozen, ideas that you can successfully implement and bring out to the world as a product are few and far between, believe it or not. I've always found that to be surprising, but it's absolutely true. Partially because a lot of ideas are so very much in terms of a very small improvement to an existing system or an existing package or an existing hardware device, that they wouldn't be considered patentable because they're just not a big enough distinction. So even though those ideas float around all the time, they're specifically not valuable in terms of patentable. But when you're talking about adding a brand new capability to a software system, you want to keep that away from having to develop these things under the open source licenses. And the way to do that is something called the Chinese wall, where you simply create the software package that is your innovation system, and then you utilize the underlying platform or whatever as a separate black box to which you simply send messages and receive results from. If you can do that, then you've walled off your idea into a separately patentable innovation, and the open source software licenses don't apply. So that's one way of looking at it, in terms of building on open source, but yet not being tied to open source. The other idea encompasses, like I said, collaborative development. Collaborative development can, 2 heads are always better than 1, and 3 are better than 2, and so on and so forth. But given the fact that patents do cover creation and ideation, who gets the credit for that is usually the biggest contention that we have in these types of things. And that actually is handled under separate contractual agreements between the inventors. Every inventor on a patent, unless a company files for the patent, if you have a group of inventors and they file for a patent, every inventor has equal rights to how you utilize, license, sell, or treat this resulting property, because intellectual property is a property. So it follows under the same rules as like land use. Everybody who is a part owner can make deals as long as they give everybody who is also a part owner their pro rata share of any revenue or results. That being said, it's difficult sometimes to determine who should be on that inventor list, because the patent office rules or the statutes say that any individual that contributes any element to the claim in the claimed invention, it has a right to be included on the list of inventors. Okay, so here's an additional complication. Inventorship and ownership can be separate things. And ownership is what controls who derives the revenue and the results. So if you are an inventor, but you assign your rights to the university, or you assign your rights to a corporate entity, or the corporate entity files on your behalf, the ownership interest lies with the entity as opposed to the inventor. So these are all issues that have to be walked through in terms of how you share these revenues and results contractually. So typically we will advise individuals to write in fact, we just had this happen last week, where two individuals, the two inventors on the patent was granted, but now they're going to assign it to a corporate entity that they've created. But one of the inventors has health problems, so he's going to get out of this. How does he get his share?
Right.
Any result? So that's handled on a contractual basis. So there are also additional aspects. Like I said, you gave me an easy question.
Yeah, right. Well, suffice to say, I guess the point is that, and this is where the strategic advisory comes in. There is no, routine standard, operating procedure for this. It's an evaluation, one at a time, looking at all the variables and devising based off of intent, interest, and the rest, a strategic framework to operate for that individual circumstance.
There are some broad categorizations that we walk through, but you're right. After you go through, okay, who are the inventors? Who's going to own it? Are you subject to these open source licenses? After that, it's all about the individual parameters on each invention.
Thank you. Well, I'm sure we could spend an entire day talking about that and the various examples. Chris, maybe you could share, from your perspective, a case study, a use case, an example, a particular experience where you've helped a particular development process navigate successfully, and what kind of hurdles and gaps or bumps you helped avoid or jump over. Give us a sense of device solutions flexing.
Okay, well, that's a great question. So we get a lot of customers who come to us sort of with the back of an envelope idea for a product. Maybe they're very immersed in some industry or something, but not so much technology or technology, and have an idea of how they want to attack something. And bringing that product to life from the back of the envelope is a really interesting challenge almost every time. The one thing that we do is we try to start with what we call a feasibility study up front. A lot of the time we know that the product is feasible, but we really try to work with the client and define what shall the device do, exactly what's it going to do. And in that process, we work through a lot of requirements with them. They often learn a lot about the market and their opportunity and how they're going to approach it at that point. So it's really a really critical part of the step, agreeing on what are we going to build. Once we agree on what it's got to do, then we do some research into available technology, open source and otherwise, that could be used to solve it, and give them a range of options, perhaps trading off size or cost for development dollars and things like that. So we try to summarize all this, give them estimates on their BOM costs, NRE costs, the size of the product, the battery life. And okay, this is what it's going to do, and this is what it's going to cost you. This is how your budgets in several dimensions are impacted. And once we've done that, we agree, well, what's the next step? Are we going to build, is this low risk? And we think we can, make another Bluetooth headset for you in 2 or 3 spins and bring that to market pretty quickly. Or maybe this is a higher risk and a more limited budget. So we work with them very much to, what kind of proof of concept can we deliver? What does it have to do in the first spin so that you can go see, demonstrate it to investors and things like that and really prove out your idea, prove that it's feasible, demonstrate it for the patent attorney that it's ready to go. So we've done this, on all kinds of different things. And then as the product gets more refined, we help them get through the regulatory hurdles. And this is one that's often pretty underestimated, I think. In the FDA world or medical world, everybody's certainly afraid of and knows that the FDA sets a pretty high bar. I think we don't do that, but we support that, and we get into a lot of questions and answers around, how do we support that? It's often underestimated, not our expertise, but the level of detail, every single resistor in there, we have to provide the data sheet. We have to provide test results in tables instead of screenshots of the oscilloscope, handwritten and signed is better than an Excel spreadsheet, as inconvenient as that may be for the engineer. So there are a lot of hurdles there, but also on the electronic side, most people maybe have heard of the FCC, might know they have to do something, but if it's got Bluetooth in it, there's a SIG with thousands of dollars of membership and certification costs. If it's a cellular, the carriers have pretty high bars. In the last year or so, those have come down, and with the pandemic, those bars have come even lower, but traditionally, a cellular device can take you $50,000 to bring to market just in testing and certification. So trying to help people early in the product during those feasibility studies anticipate that, yes, the antenna performance matters. You won't be able to turn it on with Verizon or AT&T if the antenna doesn't work well. Helping them early with these kinds of things is really pretty critical. Otherwise, and we have many customers who come to us, said, my product is done. 3 weeks ago, I learned about PTCRB and the Verizon requirements. 2 weeks ago, I failed. Can you please save me? Because of course, we're a year late and 2x our budget, and we were supposed to be shipping last week. And once in a while, we can save them pretty quickly. I know one we saved with a software fix, but sometimes it's 2 or 3 board spins to clean everything up and figure out what it's really got to do.
Well, it seems like it's similar to the healthcare equation, really. It's if you don't practice good upstream prevention and design, then you're going to be fighting downstream consequences, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mike, maybe you can, as we're running out of time here, share, you're a provider, you're an educator, you're seeing this pandemic, kind of real time unfold. As we're wrapping up today's incubator, or I should say our virtual incubator that ends today, any Hail Marys that you'd love to see, from a problems perspective, like what's not being solved against, what's still out there that's just, haunting us in respects to a problem, putting you on the spot there. Anything come to mind to leave our audience and our viewers with something to think about?
Well, at the risk of sounding a little bit aggressive with this, I think the biggest problem we have right now is getting people to wear masks and stay at home. And that having been said, the technological approach that the Chinese took to that is they started monitoring cell phone location signals, and they knew darn well when someone was out of their home and away from, in particular from a home area. There are some applications of that nature being developed in the United States. Epidemiologists have used cell phone signals from people that they assumed attended some of the protest rallies here and there throughout the country, and they knew their home locations. So having participated in one of the protests and rallies, then they started watching the home areas that those cell phones were registered in and started monitoring those areas for new outbreak. There are all sorts of unique things. You think about remote temperature sensors mounted perhaps at the door of healthcare facilities or even Walmart to make sure that someone gets intercepted if they're walking in with a fever. All sorts of innovative things that might be developed, and I think our population would perceive quite a number of those as invasions of privacy. So we're going to be walking a delicate balance as we move forward with that.
Yeah, well, that's again, getting back to the cultural narrative. It seems as consumers, we're okay with, you know, being delivered, you know, exactly what we want from an Amazon perspective. But when it comes to healthcare, there's a additional layer of sensitivity that we can't digest all that well. And I think that's something that we're going to see, you know, break through here in the coming years. Panelists, you know, incredible hour spent with you. I really appreciate, I'm sure our audience appreciates tremendously. I can't wait to wrap up the incubator and announce our awards on the 7th, and then, you know, get going on some of these really exciting submissions to see what we can do to bring them to life. So tremendous appreciation. Thank you very much, Mike, Chris, John, you know, many thanks.
Thanks for having us.
Really appreciate the opportunity.
Okay, there we go. August 7th, 2 weeks from now, we're going to have a new group of 3. Krista Covey, who is the new president and lead at the First Flight Ventures, that also has a subdivision that is Hangar 6, that is part of our virtual incubator as an innovation champion, will join us. Rachel Newberry from Riot, who is their head of development, will be joining us as well to talk about Riot's participation in the virtual incubator, and David Heenan from Cone Health Ventures to round out the panel next episode on August 7th. So please join us, and we will announce the winners on that episode. So look forward to an extra exciting ending there. And for those that are in procrastination mode and need a little direction to the DHIT Crowdicity site, dhit.crowdicity.com, simple submission process. We will use the 2 weeks between now and August 7th to evaluate and reach back out for any additional details needed. But please submit and help us solve the many challenges that exist, particularly personal health monitoring here. And again, just a quick recap of our innovation champions and program champion. Pfizer Digital presenting the program champion award, and then from Charlotte AHEC, Device Solutions, Riot, Soto IP, Hangar 6, Assist Center, and Cone Health Ventures. You can see what we tried to do was build a wraparound set of services to help mature any and all of our submissions from discovery to delivery. So again, from the bottom of my heart and from my organization to your minds, thank you very much and appreciate it. This is DHIT Frequency. We are tuning out.